Hello and welcome to the Atomic Impact Podcast, designed to help business owners and leaders with short atomic episodes to impact your business for marketing, sales, business growth, personal growth, and much, much more. I'm your host, Jason Osborne, and I'm looking forward for your business and life to be positively impacted by this podcast. And as a thank you, just for listening, I'd like to give you free access to my LinkedIn mini course to help you get on the right track with LinkedIn to generate high quality leads without being spammy. All you need to do is go to www.impactforleads.com to get immediate access. Now, let's jump into today's episode. Hey, it's Jason Osborne here again with the Atomic Impact Podcast. And on today's episode, I have the absolute pleasure of having Tony Morris on the show. I'm really looking forward to this. I was on Tony's podcast a few months back, and we just had a great time. And the thing that I love about Tony is with Tony Morris International. He is the conversion specialist, and he works with companies around the globe, helping them optimize their sales processes, which is key, because you can get all the leads in the world, but if you don't know how to optimize that sales process and convert, then you're leaving loads of business on the table. So Tony, it's a great pleasure to have you on the show today. Welcome. Do you want to just introduce yourself a little bit more? And
yes, certainly. No, thanks for having me, Jason. Yes, I've been in the world of sales for 22 years, and I'm still learning. You know, I've helped over 30,000 people now. And what amazes me is there's still so much out there to learn. And I know you've given me huge value in terms of LinkedIn and how to really, how to present my profile effectively, but also the messaging that I'm sending out, which I'm hugely grateful for. Delighted to be here and delighted to share some content.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, I know we were just chatting kind of pre-show around some stories and some things that you could just really add value into. And I'm really intrigued. You said you have a well story that you'd like to share. And you said it's something that you share a lot with other companies as well. So why don't you just jump into that and talk us through that, man?
Yeah, of course. It really, to me, this was sort of it changed my perspective on selling. And what happened was about 8 years ago, I approached one of my big industries that I serve is real estate agents. And I wanted to get into the franchises because I thought, numerous franchises, that's where I'm going to make a lot of income for the business. So I managed to get contact details from LinkedIn of the franchise director for Belvoir, a guy called Ian McLean. And I cold called him and managed to secure an appointment, which I was super excited about because Belvoir at the time, they had about 80 franchisees around the UK. So I thought if I can get in there for training, huge opportunity. Anyway, so I secured an appointment, got on the train, went out to a place called Mornington Crescent, which was a bit of a dump, to be quite honest. I remember Ian's office, I had to walk over a couple of drug addicts just to get into the office. It was revolting. Anyway, and I went in and lovely guy. And after about half an hour, I realized there was no opportunity. He basically said they have an internal training university and I've got no chance. And I was quite disappointed. I remember on the way back being a bit cheesed off, thinking, why did he agree to meet me? He knew exactly what I was going to be talking about. So I was a bit cheesed off, but my dad always told me in sales, my late father, that you never give up, you keep in touch with people, you never know what opportunities may be around the corner. Anyway, and I did that. And about a year later, he introduced me to a guy called Eric Walker, who at the time was managing director of Northwood, which is, again, a huge franchise that Belvoir now have acquired. So I met with Eric and his sort of right-hand man, a guy called Phil G, in London King's Cross. And I bought them both lunch, spent a couple of £100 for a lovely lunch. And after about an hour and a half, again, it transpired that they do everything internally and there was just no fit. And I'm starting to get the feeling that franchises might be the wrong route for my business, right? So now not only have I wasted probably 2 days of my time, but I'm £200 down, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I sort of accepted that and thought that's a bit of a business lesson. Anyway, about a year and a half, 2 years later, after staying in touch with both Eric and with Ian, Eric pinged me an email saying there's a conference, a Northwood property conference, and he wanted to book me as his speaker. I was like, fantastic. So it was a paid gig. I turned up and I delivered a great gig for about 200 franchisees. In the audience was a guy called Dorian, who is the CEO of the Belvoir Group. He came up to me after and said, absolutely loved your talk. Can I book you for Belvoir's conference in 4 months' time? I was like, of course, book me for the gig. And in the audience at Belvoir was a guy called David Newton, who owns Newton Fallowell. Again, another franchise with 60 offices. He came up to me straight after my gig and booked me. But not only did he book me for the speaking gig, he said, my team needs you. And he booked me to train his entire organization, 60 offices. On the success of that, I ended up training all of Belvoir. So I got in on the back of Belvoir. I then trained Northwood. And when I spoke at the Belvoir conference in the evening, they invited me to the evening event. And I got chatting to a lady there called Michelle Brooke, who turned out she owns a massive company called Brooke Financial Services. And she booked me to train her 140 mortgage advisors. Her best friend, Liz, happened to be at the event as well. And she said, you know what? My husband would love you. He's the director of linear recruitment. They booked me to speak at their gig and then invested heavily in my training. That meeting with Ian McLean 8 years ago was worth just over £500,000 to my business.
Wow.
But at the time when I met him, I thought how most salespeople thought of, there is no opportunity here. And I call Ian McLean my whale. You know, he was my Moby Dick. And the point of the story is you never know when you're going to land a whale. And every call that I take or every call that I make in my business, in my little head, is the whale. And what's been interesting, in 14 years I've run my training company, I've now landed 32 whales to date. But the interesting point of this story is 28 of them were tadpoles. They just knew the whale.
Yeah.
And a bit like Ian, he knew the whale. And even from that story, I'm now dealing with Eric Walker, who's now left Northwood. He's now MD of another franchise called Martin & Co. And we're now in conversations about training the whole of Martin & Co. So
Wow.
it keeps getting bigger.
Yeah.
You know,
That's...
and to me, that was a real game changer when I start to understand that everyone you speak to could be the whale or know the whale.
Yeah, that is a phenomenal story. And we all like hearing stories like that and think, oh, I wish I could have those types of stories. But one of the things that I think is really key, and because we can look at the end result and go, oh, that's phenomenal, Tony. I'd love that. Walk us through, I think that the real kind of gem in that story is what you said right at the very beginning, where you said, I walked away, you were cheesed off.
Yeah.
You thought there was no opportunity, but you kept up the lines of communication.
Yeah.
So what's the key thing that people can do there? Because sometimes I think there's two things, because I've been in sales, gosh, over 20 years myself, like, but in a long time. And there's two sides. One, noticing soon enough when there isn't an opportunity, so you're not spinning your wheels and wasting time, but also understanding where the relationship development comes, where you're not going, okay, well, there's no opportunity here, so I'm just never going to deal with it again, which I think are two polar opposites. So what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so for me, when I qualify people, I qualify them to be a prospect, which means there's either an immediate opportunity or a future opportunity, or I qualify them to be a suspect, which means I cannot serve them. For whatever reason, they are the wrong fit for my business. Now, a lot of the times, the people I'm meeting with will be a prospect, because otherwise I'm not going to invest my time with them. Now, with Ian, although he said to me 8 years ago, we have an internal training academy, I still didn't want to give up, because for me, you know, I know that there's ways that I can still add value, even if they do things internally. I was also very aware that they ran conferences and I'm a speaker. So I thought, okay, maybe not with training, but down the line, there could be an opportunity when it comes to speaking. And I knew that Belvoir was one of the biggest companies in the real estate space. So I thought if I could eventually get my way in there, I could use that success story as almost as a platform to get into other big franchises. And the way I kept in touch was really easy. I used MailChimp, so I sent emails on every couple of months. I set up trigger alerts. I call it Google Alerts. So when things were going on in the world of Belvoir, I would message Ian, say, oh, I've just read this, or I've just seen this. That's interesting. So I'm showing him that I'm in the know and I'm interested in him and his business and where he's going. And just by those little touch points enable me to keep in touch. And then when the opportunity arose to be introduced to Eric, again, that opened up a whole new door for me. So I think people need to be, that there almost needs to be some criteria of what people use to decide, are they a prospect or are they a suspect? And if you think there is some opportunity to work with them, keep in touch, because you just never know when a door will open. And also you don't know who they know. I think that's what amazes me in sales is people are well connected, especially in this world of social media. So you just never know who knows who, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's amazing. I mean, just there's so many, like, if you're listening to this podcast now, go back and listen to it again, because what Tony's just said in the last 10 minutes, there's so many gems in there. And even the thing around what you said, setting up the Google alerts. I mean, what a simple thing to do, but people just don't take the opportunity to do it. And it's not that you have to message someone every time an alert comes in, but as you said, once a quarter, hey, saw this come through. Really, I hope it's going well. It sounds like you guys are doing great. It's that touch point. And like, if you think about it, how many times have anyone done that to you?
Yeah.
Which is probably none.
Yeah, I think once, I think I've had an email where I won an award and someone commented on it, and that's it, you know. But that's the thing with sales. So I remember I got a Google alert about 5 years ago where I create what I call a hit list. These are people that I would love to serve. And they're based, my hit list is based on where I've had previous success with people like them. So I had a Google alert for McDonald's hotels that were in my hit list. And I got a alert about 4 or 5 years ago that it just said Jill Jackson's been appointed as head of sales. And she made a quote on this Google alert saying the first thing I'm going to invest in is sales training for my team. So for me, that was music to my ears, right? So I reached out to her immediately, said, congrats on, the new appointed position, and I wish you the best of luck. And by the way, if you like any advice with training, that's what I do. Be great to chat. It took me about 18 months to win that contract, but I opened up the door and stayed in touch. And 18 months later, she was like, now I'm ready. And she took me on. But interestingly, Jill then left McDonald's about a year ago and went to a company called LGH. And I was aware of it because I got a Google alert. I reached out to Jill again, who I hadn't spoken to for 3-4 months. And then she booked me as her speaker at LGH, which was one of the last speaking gigs I did before this pandemic. And then she booked me for training, which unfortunately we have to put on hold because of the pandemic. But the whole point there is Google Alert enabled me to win those 2 clients. Without that, it would never have happened.
Man, if people just take away that one thing and start implementing just a little bit of the Google alert system, that one piece of advice from you, Tony, could literally be worth hundreds of thousands of pounds, dollars, wherever in the world people are listening to this. I mean, that's phenomenal, man. That's really cool. Well, listen, man, I love what you do. And I want people to be able to contact and get in touch with you. So where's the best place for people to get a hold of you if they want to learn more about what you do?
Oh, thank you, Jason. Well, LinkedIn is definitely a good starting point. Look me up, Tony Morris on LinkedIn. But otherwise, if you go to my website, TonyMorrisInternational.com, and it's like a gateway site, and it will take you to my online program that I've just launched, which is TMI Sales University. So I'm now, my mission in sales was to be able to help over 1 million people achieve their goals in sales. So I developed the university to enable me to do that. So yeah, for your listeners, check that out and get in touch with me. And then as a gift, there's a free ebook that they'll get when they go on that website, which was my first book I published now 9 years ago, Coffees for Closers. So that was my best-selling book on telesales on Amazon. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, your listeners better get a free copy of that as well.
That's awesome. That's so much. That's really cool, Tony. Well, listen, definitely make sure and go to Tony's website, get that book. He's got great content material out there. So check that out. Tony, listen, it's the Atomic Impact podcast, so it's short episodes, but as always, you delivered that punch, that impact. So thank you so much for being on the show, man.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Jason.
Cheers. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Atomic Impact Podcast. And as a reminder, please go to www.impactforleads.com to get free access to my LinkedIn mini course to help you get on the right track with LinkedIn to generate high quality leads without being spammy. And please also like and share this episode with others and leave a comment, as I'd love to hear from you. This is Jason Osborne, and I look forward to sharing the next episode of the Atomic Impact Podcast with you.